Late-night diners see every kind of soul walk through the door. It's Marv, working the graveyard shift again, poured coffee for a soaked gentleman in torn rags and still couldn't clock who was really. Most people judge a person by their worn-out boots and faded jacket. When the manager tried kicking him out into the freezing storm, Clara stepped in. She had no idea that her simple act of mercy was about to rewrite her entire life. The clock on the wall reads 2 in the morning, and the neon sign hums outside. For Clara, the graveyard shift is a relentless test of endurance every single night. She wipes down the sticky Formica counters until her wrists ache. The smell of stale grease and burnt coffee hangs thick in the air. Clara has worked at this roadside diner for nearly 12 exhausting years. Her feet hurt before the midnight rush even begins. Yet she greets every trucker and weary traveler with a genuine smile. If you appreciate hardworking people who keep going no matter what, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because people like Clara rarely get the recognition or respect they deserve. Instead, she has to deal with Mr. Henderson, the night shift manager. Henderson is a bitter man who measures his own worth by cutting others down. He docks pay for minor mistakes and watches the security cameras like a hawk. Every shift with him feels like walking on thin ice over freezing water. He constantly reminds the staff that they are easily replaceable. Clara keeps her head down because she has medical bills piling up at home. Her mother needs daily medication that costs more than Clara earns in a week, so she swallows her pride whenever Henderson barks orders across the floor. The diner sits along a quiet stretch of interstate highway. Long-haul drivers stop by for quick meals and hot coffee. It is the kind of place where people pass through and are quickly forgotten. Tonight, the rain is pouring hard enough to rattle the glass windows. Wind sweeps across the parking lot, blowing empty paper cups across the tarmac. Inside, only 3 booths are occupied by quiet regulars staying warm. Henderson sits in his back office counting cash from the register. He grumbles about the low turnover and threatens to cut hours next week. Clara just refills the salt shakers and checks the napkin dispensers. She takes pride in keeping everything clean and organized. To her, every customer deserves a welcoming spot to sit down, no matter what they look like or how much money they spend. It was a rule taught to her by her father years ago, and she never imagined that this core value was about to be put to the ultimate test. As the front door jingled open, a blast of cold wind cut through the warm room. An elderly man stepped inside, shivering uncontrollably from the freezing rain. His clothes were soaked through, dripping water onto the checkered tile entryway. He wore an oversized coat patched at the elbows with frayed thread. His hands were calloused and trembled as he held his collar tight. To anyone looking, he appeared to be just another homeless man seeking shelter. He walked slowly toward a corner booth, trying not to draw attention. His posture was stooped, as if carrying the weight of a long, difficult journey. The other patrons in the diner glanced up with cold, judgmental eyes. A trucker shifted uncomfortably in his seat and pulled his jacket away. No one offered a greeting or a spot near the heating vent. The man sat down quietly on the edge of the vinyl bench. He placed a battered notebook on the table and gently smoothed its cover. His eyes scanned the room, observing every detail of the restaurant. He took note of the flickering ceiling light and the worn flooring tiles. "Mr." Henderson immediately stormed out of his office with a scowl. He crossed the floor with loud, aggressive steps towards the booth. He didn't see a human being in need. He saw a nuisance ruining his business. "Hey, we don't allow loitering in here!" Henderson barked loudly. The old man looked up calmly, his eyes steady despite his trembling frame. "I just need a few minutes to warm up, sir," he replied softly. "This isn't a charity shelter. Buy something or get out right now." The elderly man checked his coat pockets and pulled out a few coins. He counted 57 cents and placed them carefully on the table. "Can I please buy a black coffee?" he asked politely. Henderson sneered and pushed the coins off the edge of the booth. They scattered across the floor, ringing sharply in the quiet room. "That doesn't even cover tax. You're bothering paying customers." Clara watched the interaction from behind the service counter. Her heart sank, seeing how terribly the old man was being treated. She knew that intervening could put her job in serious jeopardy. Henderson was looking for any excuse to fire her without severance. Have you ever seen someone stand up for what's right when everything was on the line? Comment fairness down below if you believe respect matters more than status. Clara grabbed a clean coffee pot and a fresh ceramic cup. She walked straight toward the corner booth before Henderson could react. Henderson stormed across the linoleum, his boots squeaking loudly against the fresh wax. He slammed both hands down on the laminate table, rattling the salt shakers. "We don't take panhandlers in here," he barked, his voice echoing off the metal counters. The old man didn't flinch. He just adjusted his dripping coat around his shoulders. A couple of late-night truckers turned around from their stools at the counter. Henderson leaned in closer, pointing a thick finger straight at the door. "Out, now, before I call the sheriff to haul you off the property." The old man reached into his jacket, pulled out a worn vinyl wallet, and opened it slowly. Inside were just a few crumpled dollar bills and a faded silver coin. "I can pay for a cup of black coffee, son," the old man whispered quietly. Henderson sneered, snatching the wallet right out of his fragile hands. He tossed it back onto the table, sending the silver coin rolling onto the floor. That trash change won't even cover the electricity to heat the pot. You see, Henderson wasn't just managing a diner. He was running out of patience and funds. He grabbed the man by the collar of his damp trench coat to pull him up. The old man's knees buckled slightly, but his gaze remained steady and calm. "I asked nicely," Henderson growled, dragging him toward the vestibule. Rain slapped against the glass doors like gravel thrown against a window. A night cook stopped flipping patties and watched from behind the pass-through window. Nobody moved to stop him. In a place like this, management's word was absolute law. Henderson shoved the man against the stainless steel napkin dispenser. "You're scaring the paying customers, old man. Get out before I get physical." The customer straightened his posture slowly, unbothered by the intimidation. He looked at Henderson's name tag, pinned crookedly to his grease-stained shirt. "Is this how your company instructs you to treat visitors?" he asked. Henderson laughed, a loud, grating sound that filled the silent dining room. "Company? I run this floor. I don't answer to anyone who comes in off the highway." He kicked the old man's bag, sending a battered leather briefcase sliding across the tile. The latch popped open, exposing a corner of neatly folded documents inside. Henderson didn't even glance down to see what was in the case. He raised his voice louder, aiming to humiliate the man in front of everyone. "You belong down at the shelter 5 miles south, not in my booth." The old man bent down painfully to gather his scattered papers from the floor. His fingers were stiff from the freezing rain outside. Henderson stood over him, reaching for his hip pocket to pull out his cell phone. "I'm dialing dispatch right now. You've got 10 seconds to clear out." The room stayed tense and silent as the manager started counting down out loud, until a tray crashed onto the counter, cutting Henderson right off in mid-sentence. Clara stepped firmly between Henderson and the elderly gentleman on the floor. "That's enough, Henderson. Put the phone back in your pocket." The manager glared down at her, astonished that a server would dare interrupt him. "Mind your own business, Clara." "You want to be on the street with him?" Clara didn't back away an inch. She knelt down beside the customer to help him. She carefully stacked his papers and placed them back inside his briefcase. "He's a guest in this establishment, and he asked for a hot cup of coffee." Henderson sneered. "He doesn't have 2 nickels to rub together." Clara reached into the pocket of her olive green utility jacket and pulled out a $10 bill. She slapped the bill directly onto Henderson's chest. "His meal is on my tab tonight. Ring it up properly." Henderson grabbed the money, snatched his keys off the counter, and grumbled under his breath. "Fine, but if he causes trouble, it's coming out of your paycheck." Clara ignored him and gently offered her hand to the old man. "Come on, sir. Let's get you into a dry booth away from the draft." She guided him to a quiet table near the kitchen service area. She grabbed a clean towel from the counter and wiped down the wet tabletop. The old man sat down slowly, resting his worn hands on the table. "You didn't have to do that, miss," he said, his voice husky from the cold. "Nobody deserves to be thrown out into a storm like this," Clara replied with a warm smile. She walked back behind the counter, and poured a fresh mug of dark roast coffee. She added 2 small creamers and a spoon beside the rim. Then she spoke to the cook through the pass-through window. "Fire up a hot plate of beef stew and buttered toast for table 4. The cook nodded quietly, sliding a fresh bowl onto the heating lamp. Minutes later, Clara brought the steaming meal directly to the booth. She set down a basket of warm bread next to his silverware. "Eat up, sir. Take your time. You can stay as long as you need." The man picked up his spoon, taking a slow, appreciative bite. A feeling of deep relief washed over his tired features. Clara refilled his coffee mug without him even having to ask. She noticed his wet jacket hanging over the vinyl seat back. She took a clean, dry coat rack hanger and hung his coat near the radiator. The old man watched her every move with sharp, calculating eyes. Little did Clara know, this simple act of kindness was about to change her entire life. As the old man took his first sip, his sharp eyes scanned the entire room, taking note of every single detail. He noticed the spotless countertops, wiped down with care despite the exhausting late hours. Clara moved effortlessly around the kitchen, organizing the condiment shakers with methodical precision. Every surface reflected her dedication, a stark contrast to the owner's complete neglect. The old customer watched her closely as she greeted a tired trucker entering the diner. She handed him a fresh cup of coffee before he even had to ask. That kind of genuine care was something you simply couldn't teach in employee handbooks. Meanwhile, Mr. Henderson was leaning against the register, counting cash with greasy fingers. He didn't bother checking on the food quality or thanking the customers leaving the building. His only concern was squeezing every last dime out of the struggling business. The mysterious customer pulled out a small leather notebook from inside his torn jacket. Using a sleek pen hidden beneath his ragged sleeve, he made quick, precise notes. He logged Clara's efficiency, her gentle demeanor, and her immediate response to hostility. He also logged Henderson's verbal abuse and severe breach of corporate hospitality standards. If you're enjoying this story of hidden justice, hit that subscribe button right now. The old man reached down to inspect the area under his table for cleanliness. Not a single speck of dust or trash was hidden beneath the red vinyl booths. Clara had scrubbed the floors herself earlier that evening, before her shift officially began. She treated the diner like her own home, taking pride in every square inch. Henderson walked past the man's booth again, scowling and loudly clearing his throat. He made sure to bang the trash bin lid nearby just to disturb the customer's peace. Yet the gentleman remained entirely unfazed, continuing his subtle evaluation. He had seen thousands of managers across the country, but rarely one this toxic, and he had certainly rarely seen a worker as selfless and diligent as Clara. Give this video a quick like if you think hard work like Clara's deserves recognition. The old man carefully finished every bite of the hot meal Clara had paid for. He dabbed his mouth with a paper napkin, placing it neatly beside the plate. The rain outside began to slow down, fading into a light mist over the highway. He looked at his expensive luxury wristwatch hidden under a worn cotton sleeve. It was almost 3 in the morning, time for his scheduled pickup down the road. He closed his notebook, sliding it back into his deep jacket pocket. Every observation had been recorded, and the verdict was already clear in his mind. This roadside establishment was about to undergo a massive executive restructuring. Henderson had no idea his cruel actions were being factored into a corporate audit. He thought he was just bullying a helpless vagrant who couldn't fight back. Clara walked over to check if the old man needed a refill on his coffee. He offered her a warm, genuine smile that lit up his weathered face. "Thank you, young lady," he said softly. "Your kindness will not be forgotten." The old customer slowly stood up from the booth, pulling his heavy jacket tight. He placed a folded white paper napkin right under the edge of his coffee cup. Underneath the napkin lay a crisp, single green bill, carefully folded into 4. Henderson watched from the register, snickering under his breath at the tiny tip. "Look at that," Henderson scoffed. "A $1 for all your trouble, Clara." Clara ignored her manager's cruel remark and stepped toward the table with a smile. She didn't care about the money. Helping someone in need was reward enough. The old man walked out into the misty night, his footsteps fading in the distance. As the door chime rang, Clara reached out to clear the empty dishes. She picked up the coffee cup and noticed the handwritten note on the napkin. The handwriting was elegant and precise, written in dark waterproof ink. It read, "True character is revealed in how we treat those who can do nothing for us." Clara felt a warm sensation in her chest as she reread the powerful message. Then she unfolded the green bill that was tucked underneath the paper. It wasn't a $1 bill like Henderson had assumed from across the room. It was a brand new crisp $100 bill, glowing under the diner lights. Clara gasped softly, holding the generous tip in her trembling hands. If you'd ever leave a tip like that for someone who earned it, comment "fairness" down below. Henderson marched over immediately, snatching the bill right out of her view. "That belongs to the house," he bellowed, stuffing it straight into his own pocket. "You used diner ingredients to feed that bum, so this covers the store's loss." Clara stood shocked by his blatant theft, but she refused to start an argument. She carefully folded the paper napkin with the message and slipped it into her apron. That note meant far more to her than any amount of money Henderson stole. Henderson scoffed again, walking back to his office with his stolen loot. He thought he had won, completely unaware of the storm heading his way. Outside in the parking lot, a sleek black luxury sedan pulled up silently. The old customer stepped inside the rear seat, where a driver in a suit waited. "Did you find what you were looking for, sir?" the driver asked respectfully. The old man looked back at the diner's glowing neon sign with a sharp gaze. "I found a diamond in the rough," he replied, "and garbage that needs clearing." He pulled out an encrypted smartphone and dialed his corporate headquarters. "Assemble the full executive audit team for 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon," he ordered. "We are acquiring location 412 immediately." Little did Henderson know, his entire world was about to collapse in under 12 hours. By dawn, rumors were already whispering through the greasy kitchen smoke like wildfire. The diner wasn't just struggling, it was bleeding money fast. Henderson had been hiding the overdue eviction notices under the cash register for weeks. Every single vendor check had bounced like a rubber ball on concrete. The fryers were failing, and the refrigerator units hummed like dying beasts. The cooks talked in low, hushed tones behind the flickering pass-through window. They knew payroll was 3 days late, and nobody was holding out hope. Clara refilled a regular customer's coffee cup with a forced, practiced smile. Her own bank account sat at $4.12. If this place closed its doors, she couldn't pay rent next Tuesday. Henderson barged into the dining floor, sweat glistening on his forehead. He barked at the dishwasher to wipe down the glass entry doors immediately. Why the sudden panic over dirty glass at 7 in the morning? Because corporate was selling off unprofitable locations to a massive conglomerate. The rumor was that Apex Global Capital was liquidating failing diners across the state. If an establishment failed inspection, it was demolished and turned into parking. You know, here on the channel, I covered a case where a poor waitress defended a mistreated customer, unaware he owned the whole chain. Henderson thought he could mask months of negligence with fresh bleach. He scrubbed the grease off his own office window to look professional. He even threw away all the expired meat cartons into the back dumpster. Notice how bad bosses only care about appearance when their jobs are on the line? He cornered Clara by the coffee station and pointed a thick finger in her face. "If you step out of line today, Clara, you're fired without severance." He warned her not to mention the homeless man from last night to anyone. He claimed giving away free food was theft that ruined store audits. Clara kept her head down and polished the salt shakers silently. She knew arguing with Henderson in his panicked state was useless. Outside, heavy gray clouds rolled in over the asphalt highway. The storm was matching the dark mood inside the roadside building. At precisely 8 o'clock, black luxury SUVs pulled into the gravel lot. 3 vehicles parked side by side, blocking the entrance completely. Henderson practically fell over his own feet, rushing to the glass doors. The entire staff froze, holding their breath as doors opened. The final audit had officially arrived, but not like anyone expected. If you've ever felt the terrifying dread of a surprise workplace audit, comment "audit" down below right now. The heavy glass doors swung open with a sharp, cold draft. A team of executive auditors walked in with military precision. They wore tailored black suits, leather shoes, and lanyard badges. Each of them carried leather clipboards and digital tablets. Henderson plastered on his fakest, most desperate customer service grin. "Welcome to our establishment, gentlemen. We are fully prepared for your inspection." The lead auditor didn't even shake Henderson's outstretched hand. He simply stepped past him, like he was invisible furniture. Instead, the auditors formed a neat line flanking the entry aisle. They were waiting for someone else to step out of the lead vehicle. Henderson swallowed hard, his collar suddenly feeling 5 sizes too tight. A tall man in a bespoke charcoal overcoat stepped inside. He carried a silver walking cane with an engraved metal handle. Clara stared from behind the coffee counter, her heart skipping a beat. The posture, the firm stride, the silver cane. It was familiar. The man removed his dark wool hat and scanned the dining room. Beneath the immaculate styling was the exact same elderly gentleman from last night, the same man Henderson had threatened and called a dirty beggar. Henderson's eyes went wide as saucers, his jaw dropping open. You're that bum who tried to steal coffee yesterday." The lead auditor stepped forward instantly and held up a sharp hand. "Silence. You are addressing Mr. Arthur Vance, chairman of Apex Global." The entire room fell so quiet you could hear the neon sign humming. Henderson turned pale white, staggering back against the cash register. Chairman? But he was wearing rags. He had no money. "Mr. Vance smiled faintly, a cold, calculating glint in his eyes. "I perform unannounced character audits on every franchise we evaluate, Mr. Henderson. I test how managers treat those who appear to have nothing to offer them. And you, sir, failed before I even finished my first cup of water." Henderson began babbling excuses, pointing frantically around the diner. "It was a misunderstanding. We have strict policy against loitering." "Policy?" "Mr." Vance raised an eyebrow and motioned toward his lead auditor. "Let's review your policy. Wage theft, health code violations, and verbal abuse." The audit team began pulling financial records directly from the back office. Henderson stood paralyzed as his years of corruption were laid bare in seconds. Then, Mr. Vance turned away from Henderson completely. He walked slowly toward the coffee station where Clara was standing. "Good morning, Clara. I believe I left a note for you last night." Clara nodded silently, holding the folded paper receipt in her trembling hands. The trap was sprung, and Henderson was about to pay for every single insult. Henderson stepped forward, presenting his neat folders with a triumphant grin. He expected applause, or at least a nod of executive approval from the lead auditor. Instead, the tall man in the bespoke suit didn't even reach for the financial records. He simply turned toward the heavy glass doors as a sleek black sedan pulled into the lot. The room fell dead silent as the rear passenger door opened slowly. A driver stepped out, holding a large golf umbrella over an elderly gentleman. Henderson squinted through the Venetian blinds, his confidence flickering for a second. The man entering the diner wasn't wearing a threadbare coat or mud-stained boots this time. He wore a tailored charcoal wool coat, a silver watch gleaming on his wrist. Yet the sharp posture and piercing gray eyes were unmistakable. It was the ragged customer from 2 nights ago, the one Henderson tried to throw into the rain. Clara paused near the kitchen doors, holding a tray of clean coffee mugs. Her eyes widened in shock as the auditors bowed their heads in unison. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," the lead auditor announced, stepping aside deferentially. Henderson's jaw dropped, color completely draining from his face. Arthur Sterling wasn't just a random homeless wanderer looking for shelter. He was the founder and majority shareholder of Sterling Hospitality Group, the parent company that had quietly bought out the diner chain 3 weeks prior. Every year, Arthur conducted unannounced field audits in complete disguise. He didn't care about balance sheets. He cared about human character under pressure. "You see, Mr. Henderson," Arthur began, his voice echoing calmly across the diner. "A restaurant can survive poor sales, but it will never survive rotten management." Henderson swallowed hard, trying to assemble a desperate, stagey apology. "Sir, if I had known it was you, I was only protecting the business," he stammered. "That's the point," Arthur replied softly. "You only show respect when you think someone has power. Have you ever seen someone change their tune the second they realize who's boss? If you've ever had a manager like this, drop the word respect in the comments right now." Arthur walked past the paralyzed manager without giving him another glance. He stopped directly in front of Clara, who was still frozen with her tray of mugs. A warm smile broke across the Billionaire Auditor's weathered face. "Good morning, Clara. I believe I owe you $20 for the pie and coffee." Clara blinked, piecing together the events of that cold, rainy graveyard shift. The napkin note, the exact knowledge of food preparation. It all made sense. "You were testing us," Clara whispered, still holding back her astonishment. "I was testing the heart of this establishment," Arthur corrected gently. "And you were the only one who treated a human being like a human being." Arthur snapped his fingers, and his assistant stepped forward with a thick black binder. Inside were detailed logs of every interaction, cleanliness rating, and service standard. Henderson had failed every single leadership and ethics metric on the evaluation sheet. Clara, on the other hand, scored a perfect mark for empathy, efficiency, and integrity. Subscribe to the channel if you believe true kindness always gets noticed eventually. The moment of reckoning had arrived, and there was nowhere left for Henderson to hide. Arthur turned around to face Henderson, his gentle expression instantly turning to steel. "Mr. Henderson, your employment with Sterling Hospitality is terminated immediately," Arthur declared. "You will pack your personal belongings and leave the premises within 5 minutes." Henderson's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "You can't do this. I built this team. I kept this place profitable," he protested frantically. "You kept it profitable by stealing tips and skimming hours from your workers," Arthur countered. The lead auditor handed Henderson a formal legal notice regarding an impending audit of his records. Realizing his career was utterly ruined, Henderson unclipped his manager badge with trembling fingers. He tossed it onto the counter and stormed out into the morning rain without another word. The glass door slammed shut behind him, leaving a profound sense of relief in the air. Arthur turned back to Clara, pulling a gold fountain pen from his breast pocket. "Now, Clara, as for you, this branch needs leadership that understands service from the heart." He signed a document on the clipboard and slid it across the counter toward her. "Effective today, you are promoted to general manager of this location, with double your current salary." Clara gasped, placing a hand over her mouth as tears welled up in her eyes. "Mr. Sterling, I don't know what to say. I've never managed a whole store before," she admitted. "You managed to keep your integrity when no one was watching," Arthur replied earnestly. "That's the one thing I can't teach. The operational details, my team will train you on." He also handed her a small velvet box containing an equity grant for 5% of the store. Clara was no longer just an overworked graveyard shift waitress, struggling to pay rent. She was now a partner in the very business she had saved with a simple act of empathy. The morning sun finally broke through the rainy clouds, bathing the diner in bright golden light. Cooks and staff came out from the kitchen, applauding Clara as she accepted the new role. Arthur Sterling took one last sip of his coffee, nodded approvingly, and headed for the exit. Sometimes the smallest kindness in your darkest shift can change the trajectory of your life. Life has a funny way of balancing the scales when you least expect it, doesn't it? You never really know who's sitting in that corner booth at 3 in the morning. Treating people with dignity costs nothing, but as Henderson learned, cruelty costs everything. If you made it all the way to the end of this story, comment the word justice down below. That way I'll know you're one of the real ones who watched until the very final second. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another graveyard shift breakdown. Take care of yourselves out there, and I'll catch you on the next shift. Moments like these remind us that true character is revealed when nobody is watching. Clara never expected a promotion or a reward when she poured that warm cup of coffee. She simply chose kindness in a world that often rewards cruelty and greed. And Mr. Henderson learned the hard way that arrogance always comes with a heavy bill. If you believe that treating people with respect is always worth it, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now. It helps us bring more inspiring stories of justice and hidden truth straight to your screen. Have you ever witnessed someone get caught in their own trap like Henderson did? Or maybe you know a hardworking server who deserves their ultimate break. Life has a strange way of balancing the scales when we least expect it. Sometimes the poorest stranger turning up at midnight holds the key to your future. If you made it all the way to the end with me tonight, drop the word justice in the comments below. That way, I'll know you stayed for every single detail of Clara's turning point. Here on my channel, I covered another unbelievable story about a poor diner waitress who helps a struggling stranger without knowing he. Go check that one out right after this to see how another arrogant manager got taught a lesson. Keep standing up for what is right, stay sharp on your shift, and I will see you in the next story.